Yeah, welcome back, everybody. This is Night Flight. I'm Judith Koba, and today it's time to talk to Wendy Chiccetti again. Yeah, we are hitting the first, not the first quarter, the last quarter of the year, and still some very interesting energies going on there. And I would, and that is just my layman opinion, we will ask Wendy how it is. And personally, I think it will be quite a ride.
Well, in the past, I have said in some of my videos that if we're going by a graph, okay, right now we're down here, the lowest point. 2022 is the lowest point. And once we get through 22 and all of the horrific things that are coming and happening, then we will start up, moving up.
Mhm.
But 22 is the worst. And so, and we're seeing that, all around us, things collapsing and so forth. And I was looking at the EU chart, and I know Germany's a part of the EU.
Yeah, what I found interesting, we are going to have a solar eclipse over Europe.
Mhm. There's
Yeah,
that.
can you dive into that a little bit?
I can. What happens about it is, is this the partial solar on the
No,
25th?
it's a full.
It's the full, okay.
Mhm.
The full on November 8th. And that one is in Taurus, 16 degrees Taurus.
Mhm.
And when you think of what Taurus is about, and that's what you have to do, financial crisis, food shortages, supply chain issues, farming, and social unrest. Those are the big issues. Now, anytime Uranus and Saturn make that square together, all right, which is what's happening, we'll go into that more, like it happened in 2008. Do you remember 2008 global financial crash?
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing. It's a square this time and not an opposition like it was in 2008. So that's what's going to happen there. The partial eclipse on the 25th at 2 degrees Scorpio, and that's really interesting because that hits the EU chart right at the bottom at 2 degrees Scorpio. And it's at the bottom of that chart, which is the cusp of the homeland for the EU, for all of the land, all of the countries that are associated with it. And it's actually quite telling. Let me get which one. Yeah, the EU chart here. In the chart of the EU, at the base of it, you have all Scorpio. The Sun in Scorpio, Mercury in Scorpio, Mars in Scorpio, and Pluto in Scorpio. So we're talking secrets, lies, we're talking betrayal. I mean, there's so much stuff that's going to be coming out with these eclipses
Yeah,
that
I listened to a German astrologer, and she said the same, that a lot of information will be coming out and that it is up to us to distinguish between fake
yeah,
and real.
yeah.
And she said that from here on out, it gets very sophisticated in terms of dealing with the energies.
Mhm. Well, and I think another thing too is you could say dealing with the enemies,
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
just the energies.
Yeah,
Because as we've learned, governments are really not our friend.
yeah. Yeah. But isn't it also possible, I see it once in a while that they have super big plans, and then what I noticed recently is that it doesn't really come to pass. You know what I mean? For instance, China has abdicated the entire global warming climate agenda, and they told the United States until further notice that China is out.
Well,
And
positive thing.
Yeah, I would say so as well. And I thought to myself, yeah, and now what's going to happen to your lovely plans? Yeah, because China and the United States are the biggest polluters. And yeah, so now China says, until you come to your senses, United States, we are no longer interested in working there. So yeah,
Well,
and it's not that it has been reported a lot, I know that, but I thought, that's interesting.
well, the United States news organizations are bought and sold. You can't trust anything that they say. And the biggest problem is what they're not saying. That's the biggest problem, because they're not telling people the truth about what's really going on.
Mhm.
It's so orchestrated and pretty sad. But one of the things that this Uranus Saturn square is square to the ascendant of the EU chart, which is in Leo, and Leo is the identity of the EU,
Mhm.
which means, Uranus is saying we haven't gone far enough. Saturn is saying we've gone too far, and it's this back and forth with the identity. And also in the actual chart for Germany from 1955 also has Leo rising. So what's going to happen to the identity of Europe?
What is your best guess?
Well, I'm an optimist, and what I've been studying and reading is that these forces, dark forces, cabal, whatever you want to call them, New World Order forces, will be defeated.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping. It's just like China saying, hey, we're out, we're not playing this game. And as more and more things happen, like in the Netherlands, where they start working against the farmers, the food supplies, here in the United States, we have had almost 200 food factories blown up.
Mhm.
That's not coincidental. That's not accidental. It's being done on purpose. And the more hungry, the more angry that the people get, then people are willing to put their lives on the line to change things.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think that's global. And I know that there are so many more, um, what's the right word, where people get out and they protest. There are so many more protests right now around the world than what they're reporting here in the United States. You
Yeah,
have to
I
get
know.
that news somewhere else, because the powers that be here don't want us to know that other people around the globe are saying, no, we don't want this, as they try and shove these woke agendas down our throats. It's very, very interesting. And I'm very intrigued also by this these articles you sent me
Mhm.
about Russia and Germany and the United States, and what the true underlying agenda is. And I thought it particularly interesting that, for how many years, I don't remember how many years they said, the United States is making Russia out to be the evil people, and Russia hasn't taken over any countries. Russia
Yeah.
hasn't gone out and destabilized other countries. In that period of time, the United States has gone into 50 countries and destabilized them.
Yeah.
Who's the real aggressor here? And why are we continuing to make Russia the bad guy when we're worse by far?
Mhm.
But they try and put this image, oh, we're the saviors of the world, we're this, we're that, and they're not. We are
No,
not the United
no.
States.
And that was my first thought when I heard, yes, it is under international law, the Russian attack is illegal. Yes, I know, I get it. Yet there's a story behind that, a development, yeah, that led to this. none of this had to happen. It was preventable. That is one of the saddest things, I think. And even in when was it? December last year, Russia made attempt to get everybody on the round table, and United States, the Biden administration said, no, we are not interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is, you cannot treat Russia like, a little boy is playing in the sandbox, and you take away his iPad or something. Yeah, that is no way to. That is bad diplomacy.
Well, and there's so much going on under the surface that's not allowed to be reported except in alternate media about our dealings in Ukraine.
Yeah,
Talk
yeah, yeah.
about corruption, money laundering. I mean, we have 24 biolabs that are the United States biolabs in the Ukraine.
Yeah, but most of them are now going to Bulgaria and uh,
They're
Czech
moving them.
Republic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What are they doing with those biolabs?
yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't
that's
know.
the question everybody ought to be asking. Why do we need all these biolabs out of our country? What are we involved in that requires that type of secrecy? I mean, it
Yeah,
just doesn't.
I told you about this gentleman that is a German but lives in Russia. And he recently, he also traveled a lot into the Donbass and back, and then he reported from there. So, and he said, actually, the Ukrainians brought sometimes even their children, and yeah, they permitted that they did tests to their children, and that they got $100 or something. Yeah. And yeah, so that was pretty cheap
Yeah,
to get
well,
volunteers.
Bill Gates did the same thing in Africa and also in India. India threw him out, sued
Mm.
him, because of the damage to over 400,000 children with their experiments. So, the stuff that's going on out there is pretty dark and pretty bad. And the news media just tries to, go over the surface of it and throw those punchlines in it. Here in the United States, oh, Russia's the bad evil. People are waking up.
Let's go back to the solar eclipse. What is, in general, the significance of a solar eclipse? What is that indicating?
Well, eclipses are when the where the what's the right word, the waves, the electromagnetic field that comes into the earth or onto the earth from the moon or the sun is interrupted for a period of time. Okay. And how long depends on how full it is. Okay. Sometimes it can go, 3, 4, 6, 8 minutes. And in that particular amount of time, that tells you how long the effects of the eclipse will last on the earth. Okay. So depending on where the eclipse goes over, so like if it's over the EU, that's where most of the energetic issues are going to be felt.
So
Okay.
let's say it has been interrupted we just pick a number for 10 minutes. Does that mean we are dealing for the next 10 years with those
No,
energy, or no?
no,
Okay.
it's 10 months particularly.
Okay.
Each minute represents a month.
Okay.
So for the next 10 months, it's going to be a more dramatic situation based on, the sign, the degrees, all of those kinds of things. So like this one at 16 degrees Taurus, you would also look at where is 16 degrees Taurus in the EU chart, which I have here. And so that's
Okay.
going to tell you you know, what's going on. Now, the 16 degrees is within orb of the Uranus-Neptune conjunction in the EU chart. And Uranus-Neptune at 18 degrees. Now, as long as it's within 5 degrees, it's within the orb of influence. Of course, the closer it gets to 18, the stronger, or to, you know, 16, to this 18 degrees of these two planets. Uranus is, you know, sudden changes. It's like disappearances. It's like things breaking up. It's like, you know, all of those kinds of things, just quick and sudden eruptions, earth shaking. And Neptune, and they're exact, by the way, almost what they call partile. It's within 5 minutes of arc. They're so close. And Neptune is about, you know, insanity. It's about, it also has to do with oil. It has to do with delusion and illusion, all of those kinds of things. So the way I would view that is Uranus, Neptune would be, you know, quick and sudden things that create delusion or illusion or insanity. But it's definitely to do with that. And this eclipse is conjunct that in the EU chart. So you're going to be seeing a lot more controversy. Remember, Neptune is pretty slippery.
Yeah.
You know, it also has to do with water. It has to do with, you know, the flooding that we've seen, you know, the hurricanes that are coming. It also has to do with eruptions, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. You know, all of those things are part of it. And so I would assess that through the course of this eclipse, those periods of months, we don't know how long it's going to last yet, that I have seen, for that many months, you're going to see an increased amount of activity in that area. Now I'm looking, you have your Venus in Libra at 19 degrees. So that's an additional, and then your Mercury at 19 degrees in the EU chart. So what that tells me with a sextile, that your Mercury is in sextile to the Uranus Neptune, is that you're going to be hearing about it. There's going to be a lot of news about it. It's going to be talked about. It's going to be heard. So that's the big one.
And
So-
what was the aspect again? I'm sorry, I already forgot. I don't know
Okay.
what's wrong with me today. What was the aspect that?
The aspect is
No, I mean the aspect that indicates disturbing news.
Well, it's in the EU chart, it's Mercury in Scorpio. And that's sextile. That's sextile, not only to the eclipse degree, but also to the Uranus conjunct Neptune in the EU chart. So that's going to be a lot of information coming out. And because Mercury's in Scorpio, what's it going to do? It's going to bring up the shit. So this particular eclipse in November is going to bring up a lot of stuff. Now, yes, there's some direct aspects here with the EU chart, but it's going to be global, you know, too, because there are other aspects that have these same proclivities. It isn't just to the EU chart, you know, it just makes it more direct for the eclipse in the EU chart. So, but once again, it has to do with the things I talked about, which is, you know, food supply, you know, supply chains, farming. We're already seeing what's happening with that. This is just going to exacerbate it, the eclipse and the financial crisis. You know, one of the things we know, the financial crisis is coming, and there are indicators of this. And two of them are, number one, the Vatican is moving all of their money back to Vatican City, taking it out of all of
at the end of September, everything has to be at home. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then I found out yesterday that the central banks, you know, these are the banks that are run by the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, JP Morgans, the New World Order dudes that have controlled our banking, you know, for centuries. they are stockpiling gold.
Mhm.
Why would they be doing that? What is it that they know that we don't? From the
Yeah.
Vatican to the central banks.
Mhm.
Very, very interesting. Now we know that that they're trying to come up with that these darker, I call them soulless entities, that they're trying to create a cryptocurrency that can be regulated and tracked so that they can track.
CBDs, yeah.
Yeah. So they can say, we don't like what you're saying, so we're cutting off your money. Or we don't like what you're saying or what you're doing, so you can't buy food. You
Yeah.
know, these are the kinds of things that we want to really watch and do what we can to fight against it. You know, and hopefully the good forces will have something to do about that. Now, the US chart has two things. And remember, what happens in the US typically happens around the world.
Mhm.
The USA has put themselves up here, and that whatever happens to us, you know, dominoes around. So we know, when we've talked about before, the Pluto return in the US chart, which is, you know, complete destruction of the old and creating the new. Okay, so that's pretty much exact right now. We also have our Neptune return, not return, but Neptune opposition, Neptune opposite Neptune. And that's nasty. It's not fun. I mean, it has to do with uncertainty, with confusion. This is the last of the 6 passes in this opposition, which is the worst of all of them. More secrets revealed, Neptune in the world. Now, all of these things that I'm talking about here, Neptune is retrograde.
Mhm.
And it's making aspects to Mars and to Mercury and to all of these other planets which trigger it. So on a global basis, it's also, and it, you know, being retrograde, it's much more powerful. Flooding, illusion, confusion, insanity, extreme weather. All of these things are happening around the world, but more particularly in the US because of the Neptune opposition. And, you know, it's going to create a lot of issues, and it's moving into exactitude this next couple of weeks.
Mhm.
I think we're going to see a lot more stuff coming out in the US as a result of this aspect. So
Talking about retrograde, we have quite a number of planets going into
yeah,
retrograde. Mars and yeah,
I'll show
yeah,
you.
yeah.
We've got Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mercury. And
Mhm.
then, now that's 6. And now in the next little while, Mars is going to go retrograde, and it'll be in the sign of Gemini for 7 months,
Yeah.
that retrograde cycle. So yeah.
But is that a sign where Mars likes to be? I think
It's not in its detriment.
no.
It's not negative. It's just fast. It
Mhm.
it likes to move. It likes speed. So things are going to be happening very quickly. In general, when it's not retrograde, when it's retrograde, of course, it forces it to slow down. But always remember that Mars is the trigger. And as Mars goes around, it triggers other planets. Like, it's what I have here, which I think is interesting, is on October 1st, when the Saturn Uranus square is exact, Mars is sextile Uranus and squared Saturn.
Mhm.
So Mars sextile Uranus is going to be explosive stuff, and it's squared Saturn, so it's triggering warlike activity. So Mars is always the trigger, and
Mhm.
it's proving that now. But I want to show you this because, and I drew a picture of it, but this is the most unusual configuration that I have seen that's coming up on the first week of October.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so over here we have Mercury retrograde in the sun in opposition to Jupiter. Okay, Jupiter
Mhm.
in Aries. Then we have a half square from Jupiter to Uranus retrograde. And then we have another half square to Saturn retrograde. Now, isn't that interesting? The configuration, I've never seen that before. It's like an arrow, isn't it?
Mhm.
And Jupiter right here is going to intensify the action of Uranus and also intensify the action of Saturn. And Mercury over here is going to, Mercury has by this time retrograded back into Virgo. And what is Virgo about? Getting to the facts, getting to the bottom line, knowing the truth. So there's so much stuff that's going to be coming out during this time. And you look at stuff like this and you go, whoa. I mean, it's like Jupiter is the catalyst, is what I'm feeling, is the catalyst to activation and increasing the activation of that square. That square is so powerful and people don't really understand it. And this is the final square of 4, which means it's just digging deep, getting the rest of the work done. And so this is a global aspect. Yes, it affects every country in a little different way, but it's global and it's affecting the whole world. And it's like everything that isn't for our highest good is going to be torn apart. That's the goal, because we can't, as a planet, sustain what we've been going through, nor can we sustain what, like the United States and some of these other governments are doing, are pushing for, to control the people.
Mhm.
And we can't survive as a species under those kinds of circumstances. So I believe that there are forces out there that are helpful, and I think some of them are alien.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think I think on both sides. I think we have soulless alien entities that are behind this global agenda. Now, when you
Mhm.
ask yourself, who's behind Gates? Who's behind Klaus Schwab? Because what's going on in the world is a hell of a lot bigger than just a few guys sitting around a boardroom.
Mhm.
Who's
Yeah,
behind them?
I would say they are Klaus Schwab. I see him more as an announcer. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Mm.
And Bill Gates is just an evil, maniacal human being,
Mm.
soulless. He has no empathy. He doesn't care about anything. He just makes money. He just wants
Mhm.
to do what he wants to do. But what about the George Soroses? All of these guys doing their thing, but what's behind them?
Yeah.
And that's what people need to be asking themselves. And I've done a lot of research on that. And as a result, I'm finding that there are a lot of people, and there are 5 sources that I've looked at, that believe that it is soulless, because so much of what you see out there is not human. Why would humans do this to each other? It just doesn't ring true. What? What are they doing? That isn't even human. And so there's a lot of conjecture that it is a non-human, soulless race that's trying to take over the earth. Whether
Mhm.
that's true or not, I don't know, because it hasn't, come right in my face. I'm just trying to explain, to offer some type of an explanation as to what's going on in the world, because it's not human.
Yeah. I have been thinking the same for many, many years. I always thought, yeah, it's all good and fine. But at the end of the day, I think what is ultimately controlling this construct is not even human.
Yeah.
And I would not quarrel with people, you know. Some might call them aliens, others might call them demons, others might, whatever it might be, as long as we can agree on the fact that ultimately
We're
there's
being
something
manipulated.
non-human going on. I would not quarrel about the wording.
Yeah, we're being manipulated.
Mm,
And they're using our perception, manipulating our perception to believe in certain ways.
mm,
And so many people are hypnotized by it. A lot of the youth are hypnotized by it. You know, they're like this with their phones 24/7. They don't have a clue what's really going on in the world. You know, my sense right now is that if you're not prepared, get prepared and do it right away. It's almost too late, in my view. You
yeah.
need to have a supply of food and water, ways to keep warm. I know in the EU, you know, it's going to be a really hard winter,
Yeah.
and finding ways to keep warm and to help each other is critically important. But I think it's not just the adults. I think that people need to be teaching their children, you know, take the friggin' phones away out of their faces and start teaching your kids how to survive. You know, if the phones don't work, what are they going to do?
Mhm.
They haven't been trained. So parents need to shift their focus. I also think that smaller communities coming together, one person has one strength and another person has another strength, and you start, you know, one person has eggs and the other person has squash, you know, and you start trading, you start finding local growers, local suppliers in your communities so that you can get your needs met. But if you're sitting back waiting for the government to rescue you, you'll be waiting until you're in the grave, because they're not going to rescue you.
No, nobody will come along and fix the sandwich for you.
Now, absolutely not. And we've got to dig deep, and we've got to help these children, and only the adults can do that. Take them away. You know, you can always use the phone as leverage and say, look, we're going to have a class here in preparedness, and maybe do it as a group, as a community. You're going to find out how to take care of yourself, because if the power goes out, how
Mhm.
are you going to eat? How are we going to stay warm? Do you know how to grow food? How are you going to produce what you need? It certainly isn't going to be on that phone. They've got to get their hands dirty.
Mhm.
And I think that this is a time on the planet where we have to go back to tribal living.
Mhm.
And within the next couple months, particularly, you know, we're going into here in the United States, which is just insane, which is the election on November 7th. Do you know that after Biden's commie speech,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The one that had this feeling of a
oh,
satanic mass.
oh yeah, oh my God, it was just so transparent. But after that, there were about 50 subpoenas that were issued, to where the FBI went out and um, what's the right word?
Yeah, I know
Went to
it's
Trump supporters' homes. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And
Harassed.
just the other day, somebody was stopped on the road, and several
Yes.
FBI, and the dude that is
Mike
selling the
Lindell. Mike Lindell.
pillows.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mike
exactly. Yeah,
Lindell.
yeah.
And he was stopping at a drive-through
Mm.
joint, food joint. They pulled up behind him and in front of him, wouldn't let him out, and forced him to give up his phone. Well,
Mhm.
now his phone has his whole life on it. He doesn't even own a computer. It also has the mechanisms that control his hearing aid.
Mhm.
And they took it. They took literally his entire life was on that phone. And I mean, that's the kind of shenanigans they're pulling here. They are so afraid that Trump is going to run and win, that it's the old communist philosophy, the end justifies the means.
Mhm.
that it's okay we do all of this fascist stuff, just so long as we prevent Trump from being elected. I mean, it's so transparent, and to rabble rouse all of these people and take their laptops and their phones, and this January 6th committee, which is just nothing but dog and pony show. It really is showing the depth of the administration's fear.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Yes.
have similar things going on here.
Yeah.
And yeah. So, but do you think that, oh, the same thing almost. Facebook, you can send somebody a private message, yeah. And so now it turned out that Facebook has read all those private messages, and they reported everybody that was Republican to the FBI.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that there's been a lawsuit filed against Biden because
Mm.
this all came apparently from the Biden administration through the FBI, meeting with them saying, be careful here, censorship. And so lawsuits have been filed. I know Mike Lindell is also in the process of filing a lawsuit against the FBI. So there's some major stuff coming down. And I knew clear back, I think it was in 2016, it's like, do not put your political philosophy online. I just
Yeah.
knew they're going to track you. They're going to track everything.
Mm.
So I just use it for funnies. Kitty
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah. So when we see so many planets in retrograde, would you say that would also be a great time to do some personal reflection, reviewing things, straightening things up in terms of relationships, and maybe even straighten up that den that you wanted to do the
Well, yeah,
last 2 years?
Mercury retrograde has been the one that is notorious for rethink everything, don't start anything new, but
Mhm.
all of the planets have that same issue associated with it. Rethink, and with 6 planets going on 7, but now by the time most of them, and let me pull up the chart on that, because by the time Mars goes retrograde, or by the time it's through, um, all of the other planets will be direct. Isn't that interesting? I thought,
Mhm.
wow, that is just so interesting. So right now, let me go by the month here and just find out exactly. So Mars goes retrograde. Come on, where are you? It's already slowing down. It's already going half speed. Oh, I'm in 2013, that's why. Okay. Um, where am I at? January? No, I'm missing it. Well, anyway, I had looked at it and I can't remember exactly when it goes direct. It's retrograde. Oh, here it is. This says, no, that's Jupiter, Mars. Not yet. There it is in Gemini. Okay, so it's November. It's in November. It goes retrograde. And so if we move it forward another month, there's December, and there's January, and then we have, okay, so by January, Mercury goes retrograde again, but we have Neptune is direct, Saturn is direct, Pluto is direct, Uranus is still retrograde. So there's a period of time where everything goes direct. And so by the time Saturn goes direct, the only one we have retrograde is Uranus, and then Mercury will go retrograde again in January, which I think is very interesting. You know, I don't think, and I'd have to do the research on that. I don't want to take up this time, but when it actually goes retrograde in, I think it's late October, 1st of November, that most all of them are just about to go direct, and then they go direct. So it's just this next couple of months that we have all this retrograde activity. And yes, we should be, absolutely should be rethinking everything, questioning everything. We certainly don't want to believe what we're hearing in the news. You know, you just have to question everything and not accept the facts that as they present them. And so rethink your life. You know, what is it that you need to change so that you can become more self-sufficient? What do you need to change mentally so that you're not constantly going down the negative rabbit hole? What can you do to lighten and brighten your life amidst the difficulty? Okay, that's all a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Our
Yeah.
attitudes are a choice. And
Yeah,
so
when I saw this Mars in Gemini for
7
7
months,
months, to me that felt like, you know, bong. That to me was saying, hey, look at me, like an announcement, yeah,
yes, oh
a
yeah.
declaration, yeah.
And I should, what would be really interesting is as it goes retrograde and backs up and it makes aspects to all of these other planets again, you know, what does that look like? You know, because they will have gone direct, and Uranus is more or Saturn is more, excuse me, Mars is more powerful. And what will all those aspects look like? But that takes some research. I'm going to have to take time to go back and look at it and see, you know.
Do you think that the EU ultimately will fall apart?
I think it will push the fact that things like NATO are not for in our highest good.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are going to be substantive changes. Absolutely. There has to be, because so many organizations and people that are out for their own nefarious ends that don't have anything to do with the good of the people. I even wonder what's going on with the King Charles. There are some people that say that he will never be coronated, that something will happen, health issues or something, and that it's actually going to be William that's coronated. I don't know any of that. That's just stuff I've picked up.
And I don't even care which parasite is going to sit on the throne.
I'm just glad Meghan and Harry got out when they did. Because
Yeah.
I agree with you. You know, and what changes will they make? Like William, is he just a clone of his dad and you know the monarchy, or does he have some individual thought? You know, is he going to come up with some good people centered ideas that could be helpful, or is he just going to perpetuate the same?
Somebody recently made a video noting that Nostradamus said that there will be huge riots against Prince Charles and that he will not be king for a long time. So I don't know. As I said, I don't care if that parasite sits on the throne or the other one.
Yeah.
These are all people who haven't worked a day in their life.
Right. It's like I heard one person say, why should we honor somebody because they were born?
Yeah.
Why should everybody in the world bow down and honor somebody just because they were born? You know, what did they earn? What did they do to earn that, you know? Uh,
Mhm.
so it's an interesting thing. I'm just glad, like I say, that Harry and Meghan got out of it, and I hope that they can find a wonderful life together.
Mm.
But
I remember there was there are many documentaries about it, especially about the time with Diana. There are tons of documentaries.
yes,
And but I remember that somebody said to her, you know, these people do not do anything by themselves, nothing. What have you been thinking? Yeah,
mhm.
marrying into that family. And so he gave an example that at that time, Prince Charles, he woke up a servant at 2 a.m. to put the toothpaste on his brush.
Oh my God. Well, he really is a milksop. Now,
Yeah.
British people know what that means. You know, he's not the kind of personality to project as a king, as we know just how horrible he was to Diana, and you know, and he was a simpering child. He wasn't he wasn't king material, if there is such a thing. But I still I know why Diana died, let's put it that way.
Mm,
She had the dirt. You
yeah.
know, they were never going to let her come out with that dirt. But William, to me, is the wild card. Is he going to be a Stepford person, or is he going to have his own thoughts?
Mm,
That's really what, to me, is what the wild card is.
mm.
Is he going to do good for the people and he think for himself, or is he just a Stepford person?
Yeah, we will see. Maybe there was some good influence by his mother. I mean, she at least tried to raise them a little bit
Yes.
like normal children. They weren't educated in the palace. They went to school with other kids,
Yeah.
and so I would say it's not that she didn't try, but we will see how
Well, and
much of that is left.
right. And the other thing that we didn't discuss are deaths of more people, prominent people. We're going to see
Mm.
that in the next couple of months, even into 2023. So don't be surprised with sudden deaths.
Mhm.
They say sudden deaths and disappearances. That's an interesting thing too, because there are so many people implicated in the crap going on in the world. Some of them might just disappear.
Yeah, there's some of them are probably, I don't know when it was announced that Fauci is stepping down.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Thank God. But some people say he'll be more dangerous because he'll probably go to work for Moderna or some other Bill Gates or something and just get his hands dirty in something else, you know?
Yeah.
I think the part that is most incredulous to me is that people actually buy into it.
Yeah, that is the one thing that, and I told you before we started recording that we already have some supermarkets here that are without electricity, meaning the utility company has canceled their contract and it appears they cannot get a new one. So, and people read this, they see it, they experience it, but I I don't really have the impression up to now that there will be a lot of resistance and or even saying enough is enough. Yeah, forget about that. So I'm really puzzled. What has to happen before they start
People wake
moving?
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's pain. It's got to get really, really painful before people really open their eyes, you know, to what the truth of what's going on. But to me, it's just incredulous to me that people listen to people like the CDC or the WHO or Bill Gates or Fauci. It's like, these people are criminals. The CDC is owned by the Rockefeller Corporation, who
Yeah.
took over the medical profession. Why do we have problems in medicine right now? Because the Rockefellers took over the universities, you know, to teach them. They've all been programmed by that system.
Yeah.
And for people to believe it. And then the WHO is 60% of its funding comes from Bill Gates. I mean, follow the money. And when you do, you will see who's in power. You will see who's in control, you know, and not just believe, question everything,
Yeah.
you know.
So, believe it or not, our first hour is already gone.
Wow.
That was fast, yeah. So, so tell people where they can find you and what you offer.
Okay. Well, you can find me at twixtearthandsky.com. And I offer all kinds of readings. The full initial life reading is the one you want first because it really gives you the background you need. And I do coaching, spiritual and astrological coaching, and I teach the Akashic records to let people know how they can access the records. So, yeah.
Okay. So that was it, the public hour, and we are going to see the patrons on the other side. Until next time, bye.